human beings with their hands on bars, shackled, in the world are locked up here in the land of the free.
Khalif Browder was walking home from a party when he was stopped by police.
Then they said, we're going to take you to the precinct, and most likely we're going to let you go home, and then I never went home.
The 13th Amendment to the Constitution makes it unconstitutional for someone to be held as a slave. There are exceptions, including criminals.
The loophole was immediately exploited. What you got after that was a rapid transition to a mythology of black criminality.
Some people got the real problem.
Animals, beasts that needed to be controlled.
You better believe it.
I'm only human.
It became virtually impossible for a politician to run and appear soft on crime.
The kinds of kids that are called super predators.
Millions of dollars will be allocated for prison and jail facilities.
3 strikes and you are out.
It was an enormous burden on the black community, but it also violated a sense of core fairness.
Some people got the real problem.
The states were required to keep these prisons filled, even if nobody was committing a crime.
It's so difficult to talk about mass incarceration because it has become heavily monetized.
I'm only human.
The focus is on taking people from prison, putting them in community corrections, parole and probation.
How much progress is it really if now there's a private company making money off the GPS monitor?
We now have more African Americans under criminal supervision than all the slaves back in the 1850s.
I'm only human.
We are the products of the history that our ancestors chose. Products of that set of choices that we have to understand in order to escape from it.
We should go looking somewhere high. I'm only human. After all, don't put the blame on me.
Peace, everybody.
Tommy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Ricky.
Good to see you again. The 13th. It's I think last time I talked to you, we were talking about the 13th as well. It's one of the greats. It's one of the great documentaries, and it's truly necessary right now. And I think, you know, for a long time, it's been necessary to have a documentary like this. Talk to me about how you got involved in your song that is Emmy-nominated. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, yeah, this film is very important. This subject matter is very important, and it's important that Americans, we know the history of America, not only the beautiful things, but some of the painful things. And honestly, 13th is a story that just allows us to understand how much mass incarceration has affected us and how it stems back to slavery. And it was just another way to, mass incarceration from slavery to Jim Crow, and now mass incarceration has been a way to keep people in a certain place, keep black people dehumanized and marginalized and not having really full citizenship. And now black and brown people, because of this system of mass incarceration, which is the prison system. And 13th is a beautifully told film, and I was really inspired to write about this subject matter because I'm passionate about it. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and for me, growing up, I thought like going to jail was regular. And until I found out it was a systemic thing that was targeted towards us, and that we as citizens could do something about it. And what I wanted to do first was educate myself on it, and I continue to do that. But then writing a song, Letter to the Free, for 13th was another contribution. And it took a little fight for me to get this song on there, but it wasn't long after Ava heard the song that she decided that the song was definitely worth being a part of the film.
What kind of fight did you have to put up to get the song on there?
Well, it was one of those things where I called Ava and said, I know you're doing a film about mass incarceration. I was like, I just read the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, and I need to be a part of this.
Which, if none of you have read the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, I highly recommend going to a bookstore and picking it up. It is essential reading at this point in time in life. Absolutely essential.
Essential. And Ava was like, well, you could submit a song, but I actually have some people contributing songs, so we'll see if your song, can make it. And
she's the boss. She has to be that way.
I respected what she said. And then I started writing. And when I wrote, I was really inspired. I was enthused. I was thinking about Nina Simone and Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit, and just different things about. That's why I even started the verse off like southern leaves, southern trees we hung from, barren souls, heroic songs unsung. Forgive them, Father, they know this knot is undone, tied with the rope that my grandmother died. Pride of the pilgrims affect lives of millions. Since slave days separating fathers from children, institution ain't just a building, but a method of having black and brown bodies fill them. We ain't seen as human beings with feelings. Will the U.S. ever be us? Lord willing. For now we know the new Jim Crow, the stop, search, and arrest our souls. Police and policies patrol philosophies of control. A cruel hand taking hold. We let go to free them so we can free us. America's moment to come to Jesus. Now, I said that same verse.
Give it up, everybody. Let's hear it.
Now, Ricky, we were at the White House for President Obama's birthday event, and I saw Ava.
She was still there.
Yeah, we all do. But I saw Ava, and I had been drinking a little wine, so I decided I wanted to say some of the verse to her before. You know, this is when I was really trying to be a part of the film, and I said some of the verse in her ear, like, yeah, and she was like, wow, this is good, but her attention was taken away because the president was right in front of us. So you know, you can't usurp the president, right? Not President Obama, right? So eventually she was like, okay, do the song. And I did the song and I sent it to her. And she said, give me a call. And she was like, I love this song. I really think it's incredible. But she said, do you think they're going to say, oh, there they go again, trying to do it again, like because we had just done Glory for Selma. And I said, do you know how many times Martin Scorsese works with Leonardo DiCaprio, or how many times you've worked with your editor and your composer, Jason, you know, so like, let's do it. And she really loved the song, and she went with her heart and said, man, it actually had her change the end of the film. When she got Letter to the Free, she was like, I'm changing the end of the film. She wanted to show just black people enjoying themselves. She showed our families and all, throughout all this struggle and throughout all this pain and oppression, we human beings, and we love and we enjoy families, and we like all of us, right? So she showed that at the end of the film, and that's how I got to be a part of it.
Now, one of the things that you said about the film is that it's important for people to understand history. And this weekend, there's been this argument that to understand history, we need to leave Confederate statues up. I don't agree, but I'm wondering what you think about that in regards to understanding history.
Well, I think it's important that we understand history, acknowledge history, also recognize that certain parts of history may not be viewed the same way, meaning certain figures in history for one group or one person may feel like a hero. For someone else, that may feel like an oppressor. One thing I heard a gentleman say that was very intelligent to me, and I have to repeat it, is like, some black America, the way black people in America view America is different than white people view America. The way some Native Americans may view America is different. We have to understand everybody's lens is not the same, but that's okay. If we can respect each other from each other's lens and come to each other with compassion and understanding, these symbols and historic things that represent the oppression, I think they need to be taken down. I think we need to acknowledge them and say, this happened, and this is a painful thing for us to see, so have some love and compassion to say that it's not worth it. You know, like the history that has already been done is that history. Let's move forward. Like a lot of these symbols don't represent what we want to happen now. They're things of the past that were really used and are now still trying to be used to oppress people and to make people feel a certain way. If we want a better country, why do we want to hold those symbols up? You know, so that's why I feel about
There are inscriptions on some of those statues that use the words white supremacy in a celebratory way. Right. They use the words white supremacy in a way that we should look back on that as something to be proud of. That is not being historical or trying to understand history. That is celebrating something that should be demonized in our history.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it also, we have to, especially whites, Latinos, we need at this point to acknowledge that this happened. I mean, and especially coming from the white community, because some of the same people who out there thinking in a white supremacy way, they need to hear it from their own kind too. Like, they need to hear from people within their homes. Like, we have responsibilities, and I'm saying we, that means white America too, to say, hey, this is wrong. This is not the way we should be acting. Yeah, that person might have been a hero in this aspect to some people, but he also was an oppressor to another people. And because of that, we're not going to celebrate this aspect of this person anymore. And by doing that, we taking down this and removing these words, because it affects. It's like if I have something up if I have something up in a house that we share, that you and I share, Ricky, and it's really offending you as a human being, if it really hurt, like makes you feel a certain way, as a comrade, as a friend, as a housemate, I would like decide to say, man, I need to take that down. Because it's just like, my housemate is being affected by this that much. It's just an act of compassion. It's just a way of understanding it. And especially from leaders. Leaders are here to serve the people. True leaders serve the people. So when you're a leader. All the people. And when you're a true leader, you have to take into consideration people's feelings, even if you don't feel that way, even if people's views, even if you don't view that way. And a lot of our leaders don't get a chance, or don't take the initiative to go connect and really understand how people feel. They stay in their environments and make decisions for all people, but haven't been around all people or haven't interacted with all people. So it's hard for any leader or any individual, including myself, if I haven't been around people to say, hey, this is the decision that should be made for you, or this is how I should act towards you. And we especially need our leaders to have that type of knowledge, emotional knowledge, and leadership qualities.
And I want to talk about an experience that you had recently going and talking to people in just a minute, but I want to finish on the subject of the statues and, this weekend, and just very simply ask, how did you feel after this weekend's events in Charlottesville and Donald Trump, I'm not going to refer to him as the president anymore, Donald Trump's response to it?
Well, I was just landing from London, and I was coming back home, and I was like, man, it feels good to be in America, right? I was like...
You almost gave me a spit take, Colin.
Yeah. I was like, man, I literally was like, landing and said, it feels good to be in America. I went to my hotel. I was actually in Richmond, Virginia, about to perform. Went to my hotel, tried to get a quick workout in. I looked at the news, and I saw what was going on. And I honestly felt pain. I felt hurt. I felt anger. I really was just affected by it, and it was emotions coming out of me. And then I just started to calm myself and center myself more and think about what my purpose is and what God wants me to do. And I just, said, hey, we have bigger purpose. And I looked at the people down there that were spewing out the hate, and I thought about how we got to rise above that. And the way that we rise above it is being active towards the change. And we do that by figuring out things that we can change within our communities. And it starts with us. We talk about changing the world. I talk about changing the world, but man, it starts with me. How am I going to conduct myself as a human being? How am I going to react when people are spewing out hate towards me? Am I going to go back and be angry, or am I going to just figure out a way to move it to the side and keep doing the things I'm supposed to do? And I think us identifying things we can change, and that means, along with the tweets and the Instagrams and the protests, we got to figure out the policy change. We got to figure out the community things that we can do and put ourselves into that daily activity. Because if we just sitting around now, we just contributing, we just watching and tweeting about it. But yes, the tweets are important, the social media is important, but the activism it's that time now. It's that time. And I just feel like when I see that going on, I see so many people awaken, so many people awoke now, that I feel we're going to be in one of the best states that we've been in this country right now. We're moving into it right now because we are active and we're open. It's going to be some pain, too, and it's going to be some fights, but how do we get to that resolution? We got to get to it through the fights and through the pain, and I really believe in us, to be honest.
And as Heather Hares' mother said at the funeral yesterday, you know, you tried to silence her, but you magnified her.
Yeah.
And I think they did that with our voices as well in response to them.
Yeah, and I mean, so many different things, like even when they exposed a lot of the white supremacists and made them responsible by people who are employing them to be responsible. Like, when people get exposed like that, we got to make sure we don't support those things, like businesses they may work at. Like, one of the beautiful things about 13th is it showed you certain businesses that supporting mass incarceration. So if anything, you could just naturally just be like, I'm not supporting that business anymore. Do you know how important it is that people now, with the Colin Kaepernick situation, are saying, you know what? I don't even know if I'm going to watch the NFL anymore. That's powerful. They like, you know, I'm not gonna support this organization because you are ostracizing somebody who stood up for justice and equality. That's how we use our voices, just naturally, just being like, I ain't even supporting this anymore. I'm not spending my dollar with it. I'm not going to watch it. And I mean, you know, that's just, and then we continue to go do more things.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Imagine Justice performance that you're going to be doing in Sacramento. That's part of something else you've been working on. I believe we have a clip to show. Okay. Let's take a look at that clip.
This is my world. It's your world. Yeah. It's your world.
Now, talk to me about the Imagine Justice performance that's coming up in Sacramento. What that's for, and basically what inspired it, where this came from.
Well, Imagine Justice is a performance and event that I'm performing at and hosting along with J. Cole, and Andra Day will be performing. It's at Sacramento on August 21st, the capital of California, and it's to highlight or to bring light to some of the bills that we're looking to get passed in California that is dealing with young adults and juveniles being sentenced to life without parole. We want to take that away because we're the only country that has life without parole in the world. And for our young adults and juveniles to be getting sentenced to life without parole, when it's like 16-year-olds that commit acts that their lives shouldn't be thrown away for that reason. And that in itself, our prison system is like it's a trash can for human beings in many ways, and we want to change that because these lives are valuable. When I look at those clips, it reminds me of the human beings that I met in prison, and I met some incredible human beings that awakened me to a lot of things. And one of the most important things that I recognize is that they can't just be trapped in that one act that was committed. Think about us. If I thought about my 16-year-old self and some of the things I did, and if I was trapped into one act, I would never be able to be here sitting in front of you, Ricky. I would have never been able to visit our first president, first black president, President Obama. I would have never been on that stage at the Academy Awards. Like, all these lifetime things that meant so much to my life could be gone from one act.
You'd probably never be able to sort of reform yourself while in prison, too. I mean, for the most part, I'm sure there's a lot of people who've reformed themselves in prison that are serving life without parole terms. But if you're in prison for life without parole, it must be almost impossible to care and respect your and other lives while you're in there. And there are other people who are only in there for 5 or 10 years who are trying to sort of get out and not come back.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the biggest words that kept coming across in these conversations I had with the men and women that were incarcerated was hope. Like, they need some hope. They need to be recognized as human beings, and just us being there was something. But then it was important for me to go in and just listen and find out some of the things, and obviously programs that like whether it's creative programs, educational programs, is things that really can help. And not just only in California, but the reason why I'm working with ARC, which is Anti-Recidivism Coalition in California, because California has some of the toughest laws when it comes to prisons. And
you still have 3 strikes in California?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and I would think, we would think that, you know, California is known as a free state, you know, like one of those states that's not like what you think of the Midwest, but the prison system is tough out there, and we want to change that across the nation, because it's affecting. One thing, I was seeing a quote from Dr. King, and it really basically was saying, like, what affects you affects me. What affects those people who are being incarcerated is affecting us. The people that we look at as the lowest common denominator, or this country looks at as lowest common denominator economically, it's affecting the rich too. It's affecting the middle class, or whatever that exists from the middle class. It affects us. Our lives affects each other. And I can't sit down and look at people who are not being treated well. As you said, our prison system is a system of punishment more than it is of rehabilitation. So how can we get that into a state of rehabilitation and get people back into society so they can feel like full human beings and full, like, first-class citizens? And that's what it's about.
It's a big cultural change, I think, too, not just within the prison system, but the mindset of the people of America to get out of this punishment-based mindset, you know, that we're really focused on punishment in this country, and the years that people give, and the death penalty, and it's hard to sort of change the minds, and I think we need to, no matter how hard it is, change the minds of the American people that, you know, you can be reformed in prison. We need to look at other countries and look how their prison systems and their justice system run. There's a lot more effective ways of treating people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I so wish, you know, I could bring the humanity of the people that I met out, because I met people who had committed murders. They were violent offenders in there, but they took responsibility for what they had done and were like really changed human beings, transformed. And people deserve second chances. People deserve third chances. This is a country that we talk about giving second chances and being a country that is forgiving. Well, we have to be that. We need to live with that. And honestly, we know a lot of people don't get a chance to go to prisons, and some people won't take that opportunity. But I'm hoping through, like, what we're doing with Imagine Justice and the Hope and Redemption Tour, that we could bring the energy of what we met. Because it was this one brother I met, this white cat that was like he was training dogs, and he said something that really moved me, because he was doing 6 life sentences. His name is John. 6 life sentences for fraud. And
for fraud?
For fraud, 6 life sentences. And he was training dogs in the prison. And he said, man, I just try to get his dog, because he had this little dog sitting there named Chloe. I was sitting talking in the cell. He said, I'm just trying to get his dog a piece of my heart, because these dogs go to veterans. You know, they train them and they go to veterans. This cell block was amazing. Like, the people, these guys training dogs and doing, it was just beautiful to see the poetry they write. Anyway, he said, I'm just giving this dog a piece of my heart so he could take a piece of my heart into the world and give that to the human beings that he deals with. And I was like, man, some people just want to have their life back. And I think, you know, we as Americans, we can't sit and say, man, we're proud of our country and this is a great country, if we're not looking at those who are being treated less than, those who are being like, oh, he's a murderer. Because I even, at a certain point, was like, yo, you kill somebody, you jail, you should be locked up. Yeah, you should serve your time, but while you're serving that time, you should be rehabilitated. You should be treated as a human being and figure out what the root of the problem is. Because, I mean, you got 2.2 million people incarcerated right now. Over 60% of those are people of color. Think of how productive and how better the society could be if we actually put time and energy towards making those individuals better, gave those individuals a chance to get it back into the communities and do good things. Or even better, started in our communities doing good things by creating jobs and opportunities so these individuals, some of them wouldn't end up going to prison. And you know, when I realized how all this was tied in and connected, that really made me go hard when it came to the whole schools, not prisons, everything dealing with ARC, Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and the bills that we're looking to get passed.
Let's get some questions from the audience, see what they have to ask. Right here.
Common, how you doing, man?
I'm great. How you feeling?
I'm good, man. My name is Wade O. I've been a fan of your music going all the way back to Can I Borrow a Dollar, Resurrection, B, Electric Circus, all that stuff. One of the things that I've always noticed in your music is that you've always had hints of your faith in there. And now, man, seeing all this stuff that you're doing in terms of acting, your activism, and even your music now, how has your faith really influenced all of that?
That's a great question, Wade O, and thank you for knowing some of the material. I appreciate that. My faith is the beginning, the middle, and the end of what I do. Like, the biggest reason I'm up here is because I feel like I know I'm here for God's purpose. And the more and more that I discover what that purpose is for me and that purpose evolves, then it just becomes a brighter light. And the work that I do that's most fulfilling is when I'm doing that work, doing work that is bigger than me, that is not just about, okay, man, I got an Emmy nomination. I'm very grateful to have an Emmy nomination for Letter to the Free, but it's what am I going to do with it? How can I use that platform to do more with it? And for me, that's the connection of where the faith comes in. And the faith has been what sustained me when people are not checking for a common album or my acting is whack in a movie or something. But, it's the faith that really keeps me going and makes me say, hey, y'all, we're going to be in a better time ever if we just continue to do what we're doing as people of love.
Next question.
Hi, Common. My name is Chanel. And I wanted to ask you, given that there is a great injustice going on in the world today, but what would you say, I'm personally an advocate for change, but what would you say to the Black and the brown community who's starting to give up hope a little bit? What advice would you give them to, continue to keep the faith and keep pressing on to make an impacting change within their communities?
Well, I would say that you come from a bloodline and cloth of people who have fought and made it through some really tough times. And though these times may be tough for us, I believe we have everything within our power to better these times, to make these times better and to better our communities. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of humility. And faith, as Wado just brought up, is an important aspect to that. And I think when we talk about the movement and we talk about improving our communities, when we look at like the civil rights movement, it was amazing that some of those leaders were coming from spiritually based backgrounds. They were reverends and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and even Malcolm X. Like these were coming from spiritual based backgrounds, and I think we need to recognize that. And when I say it, I'm a Christian, right? But I build with the Muslims, I build with Buddhists. So when I say spirituality, I build with my Jewish brothers and sisters. It's like, when I say spirituality, it's just whatever that spirituality puts you in a place where you can't help but operate on love and a higher vibration. As our former First Lady said, when they go low, we go high. That's a spiritual statement in itself. And I think, that's something we got to continue. If you're losing hope, find your spirituality, find that first, and then start figuring out things you can do. And even when you're discouraged, because I've been in a situation where I've been discouraged and down, it's something about when you're down and you help somebody else out, it kind of brings you up. So it's something that you can go out and help somebody else and feel better. And as you start doing that, things just start moving forward and you see your worth. So I feel like we got to just keep that hope.
I have a question that has nothing to do with anything serious or spiritual. But
no, I'm so serious, man.
What was it like beating the ever-living hell out of Keanu Reeves in John Wick 2?
Yes. That was it was a joy to beat the hell out of Keanu. Nah, seriously, first of all, he's a master at what he does. And it's truly martial arts is something that he really can do. And he is by far the most dedicated and committed person that I've seen when it comes to action and getting to work in John Wick 2 with 8711, who was the stunt coordinators, and Chad Stahelski is the director of they did the first John Wick, him and his partner, and then he did John Wick 2. They are so keen on fighting techniques, and they just like the best of the best when it comes to action. So I was really it was like training with basketball, training with Michael Jordan, but I was like, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to be the next Michael Jordan. So
fighting.
Fighting, yeah. So it was like I really did my best to just be at that level, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of hard work. And one thing I loved is we would train and work out every fighting scene, and when you get there on that set, Chad would change it around, and you just got to be ready for it.
Wow. Yeah. Did you get hit at all?
Oh yeah, you get hit. You come and then Keanu at a certain point, he forget what's going on and just go hard, right? And then so you come in home with all type of bruises, people looking at you, people that know you like, damn, what happened? And you, man, I'm just fighting Keanu in the film, But it's you can't cry about a little bruise, We on the set fighting. If I started crying, oh, my arm hurt, they'd be like, come on, man, look, what are you doing? But no, it's a lot of fun, and I'm hoping my character can make it back for John Wick 3.
John Wick 3, there's also the TV show that they're developing as well that's like a prequel, a young John Wick, apparently.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I had heard rumors that your character was going to be a part of that.
Well, I don't know. I know I've heard talk about the TV program, and I know I've heard talk about them cooking up the third installment of John Wick. But all I know is I've been telling Chad, look, my character did not die. It's like it didn't look like he died. It's not official that he's dead. So look, the black man lived throughout the movie. Those days are over, right?
I feel like this might be the only interview platform where you can be told that the new Jim Crow is essential reading, and then 10 minutes later talk about John Wick 3.
Yeah.
Let's get another question from the audience.
Hi, Carmen. How are you?
How you doing?
Good. I just would like to say your work is amazing.
Thank you.
And I have a question about the movie in particular. I wanted to know what was the biggest, the most powerful experience in terms of the story of the young prisoners that you had in working with the movie, and what was your response? Did you give them encouragement or?
Oh yeah, first I listened a lot, and what was one of the things that shocked me initially was in one of the cell blocks I was in, the brothers would mention the names of the people they murdered, and it kind of shook me a little, and then they said, I asked them a question. I said, well, why are you all mentioning the names of the people that you've murdered? And they said, this is a way for us to humanize them and also humanize ourselves. And one of the gentlemen said, his name was Mike, he said, when I first came in, I didn't even think about that person as a person. I just saw them as a person on the opposite side, and a murder had happened, and he had committed the murder. But he said as he starts to transform, he really had to acknowledge that that person as a human being for himself, for that person's family, and it started them on their path to really becoming more of a human being and being treated as human beings. And it was so much understanding because one gentleman I met was from a foster home, and he was like, man, one of the reasons I never had a stable place, so I never felt secure in my life to even feel like I could do something or be something. He was like, man, kids need mental health support. So some of the ideas and thoughts was really eye-opening for me. And one of the stories that hit me in my heart was, it was a gentleman that I interviewed that I wasn't supposed to interview, found out he was from Chicago, and we were talking. He was in one of the images. His name is Robert. And we went and talked to his sister after we interviewed him. His sister was obviously not in prison, and she told me a story about how when she was with him when a murder got committed. And she said, Common, I didn't want to tell you this story, but I have to say it because they told me we need to talk about. We need to talk about this. And she told me the day that happened, they went to the place where it happened, and when they got right back in the car, my song "The Light" was on, and she said, for that moment, from that moment on, she could never listen to my song "The Light," and it was really kind of ironic. She said, "I don't know why you here now." And that you actually visited my cousin in prison when you've been so much tied into our narrative and our story about when this incident happened and him being in prison. So it was kind of like, it shook me a little bit like, wow, how did this even happen? And it made me feel like I knew I was in the right place doing the right thing.
Are we going to be able to see, obviously there's footage of you going to these prisons. Is that part of a documentary that you're making, or is that something that we'll be able to see eventually?
Yes, it's a documentary that we're making with Blumhouse, and a director named 19 is doing it, and we in partnership with ARC, and it is a documentary. This Imagine Justice started off as just Scott Butnick, who was the head of ARC, just asking me to come visit some prisons because he's been dedicated. Now, this guy's the guy that produced The Hangovers, but he changed his life. As you said, you get a mix of this guy's, his life is dedicated towards recidivism and like really making sure the prison system is changed. I mean, this guy, every prison we went into, they Scott. So many people told us how he had changed their lives. It started with just me going. He used to come to these shows we would do at Rock the Bells and different stuff and bring formerly incarcerated people. He'd say, Common, you need to come visit the prison. And at the time, I wasn't like doing it. I wasn't into it. I didn't even know like how deep it was. Eventually, when I hooked up with Scott and I was like, man, I got to do this. Once I wrote Letter to the Free, I was like, I can't just be rapping about this. I got to do something about this. And I just connected with Scott. And once we visited the prisons, we was like, we have to document this. And we went back and performed. A lot of people we performed for had never been to a concert in their life. Like, never been to a concert. I'm talking about 50-year-old men who said, I'd never been to a concert. And also another statement that happened was we had individuals say, man, for like an hour and a half, I forgot I was in prison. They was just, because as you could see, it was joy and freedom on their faces. And it's us bringing that to people who don't have it. We can do it. We got to do it. It's our responsibility to do it. Like, and it doesn't have to be in a prison for you to do it. This is something I'm passionate about, and I learned and I grew into this passion about it. But whatever your passion is, bring that love we need to bring to the people.
Common. The Imagine Justice performance in Sacramento is happening on what day is that?
August 21st, Sacramento.
August 21st,
yeah, the Capitals, J. Cole and Andre Day and a lot of great other artists. So
good luck at the Emmys in the coming weeks, and look forward to the documentary that you're putting together with Blumhouse and ARC. Common, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ricky.